Acclaimed guitarist, composer, and bandleader Bob DeVos has been a powerhouse in jazz for over 50 years, known for his blues-drenched melodic lines and horn-like phrasing. From organ jazz legends like Jimmy McGriff and Sonny Stitt to collaborations with modern masters like Eric Alexander, Bob has carved out a signature style blending straight-ahead jazz, blues, funk, and more. With an extensive discography, a career spanning legendary venues worldwide, and a passion for teaching, Bob continues to inspire and innovate in the jazz world. Bob, happy Monday. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Abe. Thanks, thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. I've admired your playing for quite some time. The first time I ever saw you play live was with Mike Ladon's organ group at Smoke. It was such a incredible performance. So I know you were someone I always wanted to talk to. So kind of
Oh
talk
yeah.
to me about what's going on for you the beginning of the year now. Do you have anything exciting you're looking forward to?
Well, um, I've been working on writing music to do a new recording, and that's always, that's always painful to do, to come up with, new ideas. What seems to help with writing tunes for me is to actually have a recording date set, and then there's a deadline, and it's like, okay, you have 2 weeks or 3 weeks to have this done, and then it'll happen by some miracle.
So do you have your next record date scheduled?
No, I don't.
You know, but do you
Maybe
have
I should do that.
yeah, do you have musicians in mind who you want to play on the record?
um, I I have several options, and it depends on what the music, what I end up writing and collecting to do. So I'm not completely set on that yet.
How many tunes do you think are going to go on the record? Do you have, or is that's everything is still kind of up in the air?
Yeah, it'll probably be, it's generally around 10, 9, 10 tunes.
Yeah, do you
Um,
find, I mean, I've always found the studio to be kind of a challenge when you have to go in and record and be isolated with the headphones and everything. It's so different than when you're on stage with people and right next to each other. I mean, like, how do you navigate that? Because it's such a different world, I feel.
I've had a lot of experience recording. I did a lot of, you know, a lot of rhythm and blues kind of pop dates where I was recording at least 4 days a week, every week. And I just got used to it. It was just something I did.
So, like, you were
It
recording
carried over
non
into the jazz thing.
Yeah, so it was more like the pop and rhythm and blues thing. You got the experience doing what was when was that time around? What time period?
Well, it started in the late 60s when right out of high school, I started working with a pop group and went on the road. Um, and and they used me on some records. They
They
were
say that's when, quote
records.
unquote, that's when the term studio musician, to be a studio musician as a career seemed like it was more reachable for someone wanting to be a professional, I would say, right?
Yeah. Um, and for a while, it looked like, oh, wow, I'll make a really good living at this. And then it just stopped, you know.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever do you ever watch the show Pawn Stars before?
No, I haven't.
The guitarist who recorded the James Bond theme was on it. Um, he was a big studio guy, session player, a British gentleman, and it seemed to me like he, like I'm like, one of the most recognizable guitar parts, someone you just can't name that person. So that job has just changed so much, like over the years. When you have this such an iconic recording like that, people are like, who's the guitar player playing on that? And it was a studio musician.
Sure. Um, and now in New York, there's hardly any recording studios. There's a few, but now and then all that kind of work went to people that had home studios and self-produced, played everything on it. So that that business changed.
Yeah, I mean, and so is the performing has changed drastically too. It just seems to be changing more and more.
Yeah. Um, I mean, in the late 70s, I was doing a lot of jingle recording, but I was also playing 5 nights a week with Richard Groove Holmes, and he had a gig in Philadelphia that was 5 nights a week for a year.
So you played in the same club
For a
five
year.
nights a week for a year?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
that doesn't happen.
No. I mean, if you can get a weekend, right, then you're lucky.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big deal now.
When you played, at that freak, what club was that in Philadelphia?
That was the Red Carpet Lounge, which doesn't exist anymore.
Was it in like Center City area?
No, it was. I think the area was Cheltenham. Um, I'm not really up on the areas of Philadelphia, but it wasn't Center City,
W-
that I.
w- When you played 5 nights a week like that, was it just new material, just always coming up, like just, or you feel like, it was mostly like you could count on like the same tunes are going to be called, or was just like constant new stuff coming your way? You just have to hear.
Well, it was, of course, a lot of blues. Um, um, different standards. Uh, I have a great story about that.
Oh, please share it.
And when I first started, I played 1 week with Groove, and at the end of the week, he said, I'm kind of getting tired of playing the same tunes. If you want to bring in something, feel free to do it. He said, I don't read music, but I can read chord changes, and that I was familiar with. So I brought in one tune, and at the start of the gig, he's just playing through the tune, real softly, just to go through the changes. And then he stops and says, C sharp minor 7. I'm like, what? And he plays something that sounds like he did this on the keyboard. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And he looks again and it again. And I said, it's the same as D flat minor 7. Well, it's like an E triad with C sharp and a bass again. And now I'm really frustrated. I said, well, it's this chord. He played it and just went on. And I was there thinking, why am I talking about music with this guy? All I
Yeah.
have to do is play it and he hears it. And he didn't even dawn on him that he should have known it. I could have said it's the first chord of the bridge of Cherokee, because he could play that in 12 keys. We would do that on the gig.
Run Cherokee through the keys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was my music lesson. And
Yeah.
that really made a big impression on me.
Yeah, there was something about, I mean, there's such a when you think about organ players that they, had these special, almost eccentric personalities. Um was who I mean who else would be, as far as playing with organ players, was someone that really was a life lesson, music lesson.
Well, my first full-time jazz gig was with Trudy Pitts, who was from Philadelphia, and
Hmm.
her husband Bill Carney played drums. Um, I had I had Pat Martino's El Hombre record, which is the only way I had heard of her, and I said, "Wow, she plays great." And I was really into Pat's playing at the time. I was just studying jazz. I was hadn't really played it that much. Trying to learn tunes and that kind of thing. And I transcribed all of his solos on it, that
On El
record.
Hombre.
And then a friend of mine, do you know Vinny Correo?
I don't.
He's a fabulous guitarist. And, and he had played with Jack McDuff and Willis Jackson and Don Patterson and many other organ groups before that. And he had heard that Trudy Pitts was auditioning guitarist. So he said, "You should go." And I'm thinking, uh, Pat Martino was the guitarist. I'm not going to get that. But I went to the audition. We played for about an hour. And somehow they heard something in me that got the gig. I was certainly no Pat Martino. Nobody is. Many have tried, many have failed.
Yeah, I mean, what a special human being.
Mm,
Special, like, I used to email with Pat a little
mhm.
bit, but and I had like seen him so many times, but I could never like go up to him in person and just start talking, just have a conversation. I would always say like such a, say thank you for the music, but I couldn't. I had him on such a pedestal. You know what I mean? But he was very friendly to me via email.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. I met him when he was playing in the late '60s at the Key Club in Newark, and I went down almost every night to hear him. And we would, he and a friend of mine, we would go to the diner after the gig.
this is probably when like in the early hours, the wee hours of the morning, right?
Yeah, and just
Like,
listen to him talk and ask him about advice and getting started and things like that. And he's great. And then I actually, sometime in the early 2000s, got to play on the same record with him, the Charles Earland tribute band. And you know, when it was happening, I said, "Oh, I never thought this would happen." You know,
full circle.
yeah.
I'm wondering, did you ever? I had my teacher when I went to Berkeley. His name was John Thomas. He played with Charles a little bit. Did you ever, you know, he was in New York at one point. He lived with George Benson actually for a brief period of time. Did you ever know about him or?
No, I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah. Well, he's passed now, but
Mm.
I'm sure. I mean, aside from seeing Pat, I'm sure you got to see some other masters during that time too. who aren't here
Yeah, well, I
anymore.
grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, and I started going to the clubs in Newark, like the Key Club and the Cadillac Club. The first organ group I saw was Lonnie Smith before his doctorate. Um, Melvin Sparks and Leo Morris, who later became Idris Muhammad, and that was the first group. It's like, wow, I can go here, hear this kind of stuff, and I heard, of course, Jack McDuff's group there, Grant Green.
You saw Grant.
Yeah.
How
Um,
was that? Was that like being in the presence of some other thing, like you know, something from the musical? I don't want to say gods, but it's Grant Green.
yeah, that didn't occur to me at the time. Um, and this was during his funk period, so early '70s. So it wasn't a group with Larry and Elvin,
Hmm.
which I'd love to have heard, but that was before my time.
It's
Um,
crazy to think he died at 43
yeah,
and on 100 recordings, 100 plus.
yeah, yeah. I saw on Facebook recently somebody that I think he was in his 50s. I forget who it was. Said, I keep thinking that we're all trying to play like people in their in the 1960s that were in their 20s and great, you know, like Tony Williams or Herbie Hancock,
Sure.
and it's it's kind of daunting.
Yeah, yeah. And you were fortunate to see some of these people. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm in my late 30s, so it's like I discovered the music when I was in my early 20s.
yeah, and
It's
then you have to.
I wish I always feel like I don't know if you feel this way or not, but why I wish there was just more organ music on the world stages of jazz.
Um,
The blues, like Lou
yeah,
Donaldson type stuff. Even that Grant Green with the organ.
yeah. There's a couple clubs in New York where you can hear that,
Sure.
but not like the scene that it was back then. you know, and excuse me. In Newark, there were probably 5 clubs that were 6 nights a week in a matinee where the same group would play. I got to hear George Benson's group with Lonnie Smith, um, Ronnie Cuber. I forget who the drummer was when I heard them. And the drummers kind of changed a lot.
With
Like,
Lonnie Smith? Well, you said it was George Benson,
yeah,
Lonnie.
yeah, that quartet. The cookbook quartet. Um,
He used to also play, there's some re-recordings on YouTube of him playing with what's his name? It's the name is just Richie Hart.
hmm Yeah, I know Richie. I haven't seen him for a long time. Does he teach at Berkeley?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
I know he
I just
taught.
remember I just remember when I went to go sign up for lessons with him, I went to one lesson and then I switched to a different teacher because it was way over my head at the time.
Oh yeah,
What he was talking about, like I needed more fundamentals to actually it wouldn't have translated. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, that's something. That's a good point. That's a something I always think about when I'm teaching. It's like, what can this person use right now? And if you're going to go over their head, you
Yeah, I
can't
got
use this.
scared off, you know?
Yeah, you know, there's a point where, okay, this is what you need now, and that, you know, and you can put that to use right away, and then build up to that point. Um, I know that there's a lot of, I've heard that a lot about some teachers. They're, trying to go into nuclear physics right away, and the student isn't ready for that. Maybe they will be in a few years, but not at that point.
Yeah, my teacher was that guy John I told you about. We had to
Yeah.
learn before we even got into any improvisation whatsoever. You had to learn the 12 well not obviously in 12 keys, but so like the major scale, five positions from every mode,
Mm-hmm.
and melodic minor from every mode, five positions, and harmonic minor, five positions every degree.
Uh,
And then after that, he talked about improvisation. It's a lot,
yeah.
but that was his way. You know, that's
Yeah.
there's a million ways to teach at the end of the day.
Yeah. Did you ever hear of Harry Leahy? Harry Leahy was a phenomenal teacher from Plainfield, New Jersey. Um, he died in the early, I think, 1990, either 1990 or 1991. And, excuse me, I should have some water here. um, and he had studied early on with Johnny Smith when Johnny Smith lived in New York, and also Dennis Sandoli in
Oh,
Philadelphia.
yeah, Dennison.
He was studying with Dennis at the time I studied with him. And Harry played with Phil Wood's group during the 1970s or 1980s, maybe. 70s, 80s, somewhere around there. And he was a great guitarist and a very generous teacher. And everybody studied with him. I'm trying to think of friends of mine, Vic Juris, Chuck Loeb, John Harrington. Mm,
He was like almost like so he's a good he was almost like sort of like a Lenny Tristano slash Charlie Banacus slash Dennis Sandoli of guitar kind of thing, like
kind of,
on
yeah,
that level of education.
yeah, and a fabulous musician. Yeah. He has some records of his own. Of course, they were all out of print.
Does he have any books by any chance? Or
No,
yeah.
um, that would have been good if he had done that.
When I was at Berkeley, one of my teachers, he studied with Charlie Banacus, but he didn't have any book. He just would just show me on the guitar like just Charlie Banacus type stuff that, I've heard
Mm-hmm.
Mike Stern play, and it just I mean, but maybe that's better to not have it on a piece of paper too.
Yeah, I remember Vic Juris was taking lessons with him too, just by correspondence. I think they would, mail cassettes back and forth. Remember
That's awesome.
cassettes? um, yeah, teachers like that are kind of rare. You know,
Yeah, I wish there should be like I wish there was just more information with those names I mentioned, just I mean, there probably is. I just have to do more of a deep dive, which this conversation will inspire me to.
Right. Um, I'm sure there are people that are, teaching Charlie Banakis his stuff, uh, but I don't know who.
Yeah. No,
I'm sure
Bob,
he's got.
this has been great. I mean, it's thank you so much for sitting down with me, and letting me learn more about you. And this conversation will let the world hear about such a great player like yourself. So I just want to say thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Yeah. Um, people should check out my recordings on. I have some on High Note. I have 6 CDs out. Check them out. Buy them.
We'll link to all that stuff on the YouTube and all that. There'll be a
Yeah.
link.
It's sad that people don't buy CDs anymore. Oh, wait a minute! I don't have a CD player. What do you listen to music on?
Yeah. Yeah, the cars don't even have them anymore.
I
So,
know.
no, thanks so much, Bob.
Okay. Yeah, it was a pleasure, Abe.